Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
From Network Nova Live, it's August 2024, and you are on the Friday Power Lunch. Lucky us that you're with us. I'm Katherine White, your host, one of the hosts, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action. We fuel the grassroots, man, coast to coast. We get things done, and yes, we make politics fun. And today it's going to be about volunteers. Use them or lose them. And I'm going to say that this great guest we have on a lineup, I'd like to welcome Susan Labandibar, co-founder, Swing Blue Alliance. Great to have you in the room, Susan. You've been doing such great work. KRIS Nelson, Warren County Democratic Chair and Regional Organizer of the Coordinated Campaign. Let's give her some snaps. Thank you, KRIS, for being here. And lastly, Susan Loesberg, Vice Chair, Virginia Beach Democratic Committee and Virginia Liaison for Moms Demand Action, former lead for the Norfolk, Virginia Beach chapter. We hope we got that right. And we'll talk about that later. But let's do our power chat with the most amazing hostesses, Carrie, short from our Coastal Community Coalition, and Norton, also from the Eastern Shore. I've been blocked out up here in Northern Virginia. Got all the coastal girls program, right?
The tides have changed.
Yeah. So I want to just say, you had mentioned, we talked about volunteerism. I talked to Jackson from the Harris campaign. You mentioned this big sign up, 10,000 Virginians signed up, over 300 events. This is really great. But we also know there's a lot of things we need to think about, Carrie. And this is something that you really wanted to talk about today. And you really put this show on the road, as we say. So talk about why is this so important to you when we talk about volunteers?
Well, this is my passion. This is my career, nonprofit management. I've been managing volunteers all my professional life. So managing volunteers is a big part of just who I am and what I think is important in this world. And I think we've all been talking about relational organizing in terms of getting voters out and making relationships with voters. But I really wanted to back up a little bit as we're getting people out of the woodwork. This is a fantastic time to kind of strike while the iron is hot and find ways to engage these folks so that we don't lose them. You know, I have this kind of idealistic vision of our country and what our founding folks thought about when they put this together. We were all supposed to be doing this from day one.
Really?
We weren't supposed to just have elections in Virginia every year, right? And just set it in motion and watch it all happen. It was meant for us to play an active role every single day. It's part of democracy. We lose sight of that. And when people start coming out of the woodwork like that, It's energizing for all of us to find new ways to get them involved in the democratic process, in democracy in general. That's why we wanted to kind of look at it from a real high view, and really be able to look at what are all the activities that people can get involved in to protect democracy, to get their neighbors involved, and to really fulfill our mission as a country, as a democracy, that it takes all of us, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's my soapbox. I know Fennell has lots to say about this too, because we've been talking about this for weeks.
Yeah, we have. So I'll say two things. First, I agree with absolutely everything that Carrie has said. And I'll add to what I said last week from Mary McLeod Bethune, who said, this process is both a burden and a responsibility. And I think that after 2016, we all understood that it was a real responsibility. And what I think is also very interesting, and to Carrie's point about use them or lose them, is that I think the dynamics of what the grassroots and what organizers and what volunteers look like today is different. It is now where people sort of retired and you just sort of retired. But now when you retire, you have all the folks who were always there. And then you have some of these retired professionals who retired but now they're totally engaged. So now you have this huge audience of all of these women, all of these different women who are out. And they are a little bit of everything. They're moms, they are caretakers, they are doctors, they are professionals, and they have all of this talent. And so you cannot waste it. We are a powerful group today, and we have to make sure that, to Carrie's point, we use it or we lose it.
Right. And also thinking about the other generation. So on the other end of this, younger people are getting involved, and it's the grassroots that see their talent and make a place for them. We don't have cookie cutter places for our volunteers. That's why I'm so excited about the conversation we have with our guests today, because we're finding uniquely strange and needed things. Like, these things are just a little weird, some of the things we're asking them to do. I can't wait to talk with Susan Loesberg about some of the things they're doing in Virginia Beach with their volunteers. I mean, there are little niche placements we can find for young people. I just had a conversation with a volunteer yesterday who said, our volunteers are in the car eating the Easy Mac behind the wheel every night at 6:30. We're not coming to a meeting at 6. We're driving our kids. Do you remember those days? Yes, I do. I remember. So yeah, we got to find something else for them to do. They can assemble signs during the day at the campaign office. They can do things during the day. You can do things in carpool. I mean, this is amazing. And it's the grassroots that seem to think outside of the box when it comes to using these volunteers. So it takes all of us in every stage of life. And I always tell my friends, listen, you can do the book fair at school. Yeah. You can work a precinct, right? And if you can run a PTA fundraiser, you can run a fundraiser for a campaign. So let's just break it up and talk about it like grassroots leaders who we are, and find unique places for these folks and get them engaged. Because if we don't use them,
we lose them. Well, I think also too, the big part of the conversation, and I know when in this room, if folks that are on this call, what I love, if you're volunteering now or you're a grassroots leader or organizer, all those things are new. Some of those challenges, if there's anything you've been finding, I'm interested to hear. I know that I've talked to some people that like onto a campaign office and it's not been open. I don't know. What we were sort of trying to fill in the blanks about was, it's great to have 170,000 new volunteers, but making sure that they feel connected, and connection is the most important thing. We talk about this. When I talked to Jackson from the coordinator yesterday, he talked about they're hitting high marks in August. They usually hit in September. They usually hit in September. And I mean, they're literally organizing hikes for Kamala. I mean, a lot of interesting things are happening. But I think what I would love to also make sure we're doing is, making sure volunteers do feel their time is respected. I know we'll talk about that today, but maybe these campaigns also need the help to manage these volunteers. I think that's a little bit right now. There's an uptick, and can we manage them? Pamela, thank you for the hand up. That works in the after chat, but if you want to put your question in the chat, please, then maybe we could address it. Thank you for that. All right.
Hey, Katherine, before you move on, there's just one other quick thing that I just want to say, and that is for everybody to have a little patience, and that's on both sides. Because we've never had this many volunteers before, and some of the volunteers are new. And so everybody just has to have a little bit of patience and give a little bit of grace on both sides for all the work that people are doing. So I think that's an important thing just to sort of keep in the back of your head.
We try. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Carrie to lead the first conversation. I'm super stoked. And ladies, and I'll see you. We're going to do a roundtable at the end.
Awesome. We'll all get to compare notes.
Yeah.
So we're going to introduce Susan Labandibar. She's been on the show before. Going to be talking to her about something a little different, as I mentioned, just sort of getting sort of the overall high view of the volunteer opportunities in our space, right? So let me just open up by reintroducing you. Susan Labandibar is the co-founder of Swing Blue Alliance. She has compiled a list of volunteer activities that grassroots activists can do for campaigns, for movements, and has basically rated them in all areas of engagement and what a high investment of time and energy would be versus a lower investment of time and energy. So we're going to talk about that. But before we talk about this list, I want to say people are motivated to get up off of that thing, right? They're getting up off of their couch. we always see upticks like this after typically the convention, right? Unfortunately, there are also upticks after school shootings or decisions at the Supreme Court level. We all see little upticks. Are you seeing an uptick with Swing Blue Alliance?
Oh, yes. Yes. I happen to have not filtered out of my mailbox every single volunteer form response that comes in. So I can just see them there, and they're all marked orange, and I can just see them rolling in. And we have a volunteer support team that reaches out to every one of them and helps them find the right place.
That's great. So your volunteer support team actually reaches out on an individual basis to the new volunteers. Great. Wonderful. So I want to know, I feel like getting these volunteers engaged while they're hot is something that's causing me a tiny bit of anxiety. I'm just going to be honest. Like I'm seeing the orange in my inbox and I'm getting anxious about it because I do feel a sense of urgency about getting them involved. So let's talk about this because sometimes, honestly, as Fennell just mentioned, the campaigns aren't ready. We have to be a little patient. They have their own metrics and their own list of things that they want to get people involved in. How did you come up with this list of other things people can do for campaigns and movements?
Well, it was a little bit out of necessity because, as you know, even though I'm in Philadelphia right now, registering voters and canvassing, I normally live in Cambridge, like most of the Swing Blue Alliance volunteers. So we found that one of our best and highest uses is actually calling and doing volunteer recruitment. Of course, many times campaigns want us to recruit for canvassers. And as you know, Carrie, not everybody is going to go out and knock doors. And so some people were willing to do phone banks, but we just felt keenly, and I know you felt that too, is that people are whole people. They can do so many different things. Why are we boxing them into this little widget? I love Sonia Murray from Vote Pro Pros. She said they want to make volunteers into widgets. The input and the output, and that's not really what volunteering is about.
Right. I remember when in some of my jobs previously managing volunteers, when people would call me for volunteers, I'd say, "Oh yeah, sure. Let me just open up my drawer and pull out some frozen volunteers and defrost them and send them right over." Like it just doesn't happen that way. So Robin's going to bring up some of the lists. Like we can't obviously put this list of 70 activities, which is fantastic. I know that I love this list. And so there are 70 activities on this list. We started talking about it before today's show. But let's just look at some of these things. These are only 13 things that I picked. But here are some ideas of what this list looks like. And Robin's sharing a link to you all. Everyone can see the full list after this. But let's just take a look at this. So you put candidate meet and greet on here. That's not something I would have thought to put on a list of things that activists can do.
Well, actually, it turns out that is the cornerstone of the very successful volunteer engagement program in the Mecklenburg County Democrats have been using. And they invite potential volunteers to a pizza party where they get to meet the candidate. And they've found by seeding the ground with this for months, now they're calling these people back and asking them to canvass and them saying yes.
Wow. Yeah, just from meeting a candidate. So we talk about
and the pizza Carrie.
And the pizza. Well, there's always a little bribery. Food is always good. So I was also surprised to see this soliciting advice and ideas. Can you explain that one to us a little bit? How would I, as a volunteer, ask a volunteer to do something like that?
Well, the best way to get someone involved is to actually actively listen to their thoughts and opinions. And as you know, and Carrie, this has happened to you, you actually specialize, as far as I understand it, sometimes in people who have tried to volunteer for the party and not been satisfied with the experience. So the first thing you actually need to do is listen to them and ask what their previous volunteering experience has been like and what advice they would give to the people who were organizing those events.
Right. I know, for one, working with Delegate Glass here, this was something that that we talked about becoming a content expert. I know even on one of the previous shows with Network Nova, we talked about the role that citizens can play being a content expert, because when Delegate Glass would have legislation on specific issues, but I would know the volunteers in the community who had worked on that issue, and because they were considered a content expert, I could then plug them in with Delegate Glass to give her advice on some of her legislation. So I know just sort of post-electoral politics, it works out that way. But I would imagine that getting advice and ideas would really make a volunteer feel valued. Yeah, because their opinion is so valued. So I have to say, truth be told, when we met, this list was 69. And I kept getting hung up on the list of 69 because of a bunch of middle school jokesters out there every time I talked about the list. So I added the 70th, and it is purchase stamps. And I added this one because last fall this spring before the primary for Missy Cotter Smozzle and CD2, we sent almost 5,000 postcards. And it got to the point where I had people who weren't really willing to do a whole heck of a lot. And I said, could you just go buy me some stamps? Yeah. So we added the purchasing stamps as number 70, also to avoid awkward conversations about the list of 69 activities. Anyway. So I'm glad you put literature drop on here. Sometimes I feel like when the volunteers are presented with the option to canvas, we don't differentiate between a canvas and a literature drop. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Well, a lot of people may not be accustomed to knocking on a stranger's door and having a face-to-face conversation. And the fear of rejection is very high. And I don't think we brush it off, but it's real. And a lit drop is an easy way to get people to go to doors, drop something. And of course, what happens is you do meet people and you start talking to them, and then it turns out that it's not that bad. So there's that part of it too.
Right. So I was kind of thinking, as I was going through this list, and so you can see everyone looking at the list, you can kind of see where there's this column C level of engagement. So she's ranked them low, medium, high, things that are considered more engagement. But then I kind of wanted to add on top of that, this idea of what is considered to be risky. So I would love for folks to start putting in the chat, looking at some of these on the list, what you perceive to be kind of risky. So for example, a literature job is a medium level of engagement, but it's kind of low risk unless somebody opens their door and tries to engage you in conversation, and that might become a little more risky. One of the things that I thought in terms of one of the things that we didn't pick up, but you have putting signs in your yard on the list. That's real low engagement. It doesn't take much to stick a sign in your yard. But in terms of risk, the perceived risk of something like that, well, that might be a little higher risk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I had talked about putting a risk column in there, and I think it's a great idea. Of course, different people have different ideas about what's risky. And back at home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, if I put a Kamala Harris sign on my lawn, that is a pretty low risk operation. So it really depends on where you are.
Right. I have made, right at the beginning of COVA Coalition, we had made these anti-hate posters. They're yard signs, and it says hate has no home in Norfolk, because we were having a big brewery come to town, and there were women at a rally at a community event that Heidi and I were at that said, "Oh no, I can't put that in my yard." And it was like, it's just about no hate. And yet even that was perceived as being kind of a risky thing to put in your yard. So I just wanted, there it is, place yard signs in public places. That's even bigger of a engagement, because you're driving around looking for public places. You're sometimes asking the shop owners, hey, can we put this out in your space? I know in rural areas, that is a huge deal for their campaigns. And you considered that to be high level engagement. Right. So just the opposition research I kind of latched onto too, just real quick. what can volunteers do in terms of opposition research? What is helpful?
Well, there's also it's also under the category of skilled volunteering. So the category also indicates sometimes that you might need to have a pre-existing skill set. And I think that there are a lot of people who do this for business. There are actually people who have degrees in business, competitive business analysis, and those are very transferable skills. So I have placed a volunteer who does opposition research, and she leverages pre-existing skills. What I haven't found is people who are willing to go to events, and maybe you have, Carrie, to go to events and look for things that candidates might say that might, especially in a primary, that later might come back to haunt them. And that would be great if I knew how to recruit more people like that.
Yeah, that would be a high risk activity, I think,
high.
Putting on a red baseball hat and standing in the back of the auditorium to hear what they have to say. So I really, really value this work that you've done. I really love this idea of leveling, kind of coming up with a level of engagement. I think what we've been talking about this week, we've sort of coined as the other 68. So because we hear a lot about canvassing, and we hear a lot about postcarding, right? So I kind of want the call to action this week from a New York Times speaking with you to kind of be about the other 68, let's focus on the other 68. We've got postcarding, not even on the low end of the spectrum. There's so many other things that are less effort than postcards, and postcards are hugely important, as we've seen in campaigns. So we've got everything from postcarding to canvassing. Let's focus on the other 68 and really try to meet volunteers where they are.
So, Carrie, this is why I at least started by putting this on a Google sheet, because the issue is it's always, let's say, Carrie, that you wanted someone to bring refreshments to your meeting. Now, you are a really great organizer, and you would get it together to take the extra time to get someone to bring the refreshments to a meeting. But a lot of people are going to be so busy. They don't have the time to set up systems so that someone on a regular basis can bring the refreshments to a meeting. And that's how organizers get drowned, because they don't have the time to distribute the tasks. I think we need a system that is way more than what I just put up here, but that will really enable busy organizers to have a full range of activities that they recruit people for. And the fact is, there is no good organizing software, and that's really been concentrated too many responsibilities on people like you who want to do this work. And I can understand why you're getting overwhelmed, because there isn't something that will easily help you manage this. Sure, you can sign up people to do canvassing and phone banks all day long, but you can't. It seems like you can't sign up people very easily to bring the coffee to a meeting, and that shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And we've always just talked about the distinction between delegating and dumping, right? And a true organizer, we are also thinking of ourselves and everyone on this call as leaders. And if we're really going to be leaders, that means we value these volunteers. We treat them like people, and we're leading them into their engagement, which means we're getting to them early and saying, I need someone to be my lead on refreshments, and you're the perfect person to do that. I can see it in the sparkle in your eye when I mention Twinkies, that this is something perfect for you. I mean, that is a leadership skill that a lot of organizers on this call probably have, but we get busy, we get caught up, and we're just struggling to make sure we've got Twinkies at the meeting, and we don't think about cultivating a role for other people.
So, Carrie, I was on an amazing call the other day where I was placing a volunteer from California to work for 6 weeks, registering voters with the Kent County Democrats in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the person that was going to provide the activities for the volunteer said, I believe in delegate to elevate. And it doesn't
Nice.
rhyme perfectly, but
Nice.
that's exactly it. Because if the volunteer doesn't have agency, then they're going to send you an email saying, well, do I need to bring decaf coffee? What kind of creamer should I bring?
Mm.
And then it starts to, you need to be able to delegate in a way so that people feel ownership and agency over something, and a permission structure, so that if they forget the decaf coffee, that's fine. It's no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to have a roundtable at the end of the call. We're going to bring everybody in to weigh in on that. But I just want to, so I want to stick a pin in that in terms of managing the volunteers after we get them. But I was really, really happy you could join us today to talk about all these specific tasks that we probably don't think about on a daily basis. The other 68. So that's Susan Labandibar from Swing Blue Alliance coming in to tell us about this work she's done to create this list of volunteer opportunities. So thanks so much, Susan. It was a great conversation, and I know you're going to stick around for that for our panel. So
Thanks, Carrie.
thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Thank you, Susan. Carrie, I've been looking at the chat, and there's some great questions in there. I like the one on micromanaging leaders. When, you ask people to do stuff and then you micromanage them. There's a lot of pet peeves going on in there. I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. If you want to take a second break to get ready, I'm going to go over we're going to do a little interlude because we're getting up off that thing. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to empower women.
This is our interlude. I kind of like it.
It's a little interlude, but I want to talk about, we talk about people signing up to volunteer. Well, we want to keep the momentum going, and we, Network Nova, and a lot of our partners from the Women's Summit, we're hosting an event August 25th at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. called Empowering Women to Rally the Vote, because we want to use this energy and enthusiasm. It's a virtual rally. We have Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan. We will have Senator Jennifer Foy will be joining us. So we have some awesome elected that'll be speaking, but there'll also be leaders of organizations talking about what we can do to make sure that we win. No, we're going to win, but we're going to win big. But we do want to celebrate Women's Equality Week that kicks off August 26th. And that's a big day because, they are doing the movie Ratified and showing it down in Richmond at the theater. So we'll be rallying over there. I don't want to go in too much detail, except you want to be on that call. So we're going to put the registration link in the chat so you can get into action with us, because we will be talking about the 72 days of action, the different phone banks you could do for Gloria Witt in CD5 and Leslie Meta in CD1 and Missy Smalls-O'Connor in CD2. We're going to rock it out, and it's going to be women over 50 doing it, right? So I'm just teasing. And then also, I don't know if you're going to bring up the nuggets for a little bit of nugget talk with Fanel. Do you want to do nugget talk? Come on in the room with me, friend. Fanel, let's talk about your nuggets. And unmute yourself, though. I know you're over there writing your dissertation, but
no. See, I have this really cool thing, but we get to mute me twice, and that's what gets me confused.
What's happening? Yeah.
But so here we go. The nuggets are fabulous. And let me just say this, because we are in this bubble that we're in, and we think that everybody knows who Vice President Kamala Harris is, but I got to tell you, everybody doesn't. And so these nuggets are wonderful. I've been giving them out, and people are loving them. So if you haven't got your Kamala Harris nuggets, get your nuggets. And there's many others that you can choose from. So don't just think that you know about everything. Make sure that you know that others are not as informed as you. So
thank you for that little interlude, as we say. And I know didn't forget about Karen Baker in 9. We also have Ken Mitchell in 6. It's like, we are going to make sure. And, we're talking about enthusiasm and people signing up. What's happening to our congressional? They're going to be uplifted by the top of the ticket. Usually it's the reverse, but I think in Virginia, that top of the ticket is going to really help some of the people that are running. Don't you agree?
I absolutely agree. And I would just say that whole reframe around freedom, it matters at the bottom of the ticket as much as it matters at the top of the ticket. And as we always say, the further down the ballot you vote, the closer it is to your front door.
And lastly, let's show that image real quick if we have it queued up. The early voting, as a pusher, we want to make sure we are pushing our early vote. And this is what we want to say in the room. Every single person here, every single person, all 154 of you, you need to click on the action link and get into the style of early voting. And we want this to go nationwide. We think this is the key to our victory. Fennell, what do you have to say about it?
I absolutely think is the key to our victory. And so you might not get there on day one, but as long as you get there in time doing the early voting where we can bank as many votes as possible. And there's so many fun activities that you can do around it. So get out there and vote early.
I think when you're talking with volunteers, and just when I say volunteers, I mean all of us really, kind of in a way that we want to make sure that around the polling day on day one, the early voting, that you use these tools that we've created. And I will say Dennis Orsinger made this wonderful, our website. And then Stare has been working mightily on this. This is passionate with the Virginia Grassroots Coalition working on this. You can do just a brunch and go to get people to vote, have people come over your house, but organize it and put it on this map. We want to fill out the map. If you're from Maryland, put it in there. We have a statewide opportunity here that you can, all over the map. So, and it's just so important because it's really just gets people psyched up, helps the campaigns, and we get to have fun, which I just love. So that's cool. All right.
Damn right.
Damn right. We're damn right, right? We're damn right. Okay, so we do want to go to your next guest. So we want to get to that and introduce KRIS Nelson. Give her a real Fire to Power Lunch introduction. And for those listening out in YouTube and Spotify land, go ahead.
Yes. So I am so excited to talk to KRIS Nelson, who is the Warren County Democratic Chair, and she's also the regional organizer for the coordinated campaign. And she is also the creator and inventor of Super Volunteers. So I want us to talk about that a little. So welcome and thank you so much for being on the show today. So let's just talk about what you do to create Super Volunteers.
Honestly, I make them family. That is what you do. People come out for the cause, the reason, and they want to help. And you give them community, especially here in the rural areas. There's few of us. And when you see somebody at the grocery store and they're wearing a liberal shirt or something, you go to them and like, oh my God, I'm one of you. And you give them all the information and you bring them in and you give them community to let them know that they're not alone. And then soon they become your family. About the kids and grandkids and all the rest.
So I don't know that everybody can do everything you do, but you're really creative in terms of how you help volunteers engage. So let's talk a little bit about some of the creative things that you do. Maybe someone wants to volunteer, but they've got kids that they have to pick up and they don't quite have the availability. What do you do to solve for a problem like that?
Oh, well, if you've got kids, then there are so many things that you can do. One, we have an amazing person that makes coloring books for kids for early voting. They've got candidates on them. We've had them color, put them all over. And anything creative that you could do as far as with your kids and artwork and anything like that, we keep coloring books and stuff like that in the offices, to where if you want to come in and do a phone bank real quick, we've got activities for your kids. You can also load them up and deliver signs. There's so many things that you can do with your children. You can canvas. You can put them in the buggy and go get some exercise and knock on doors with the kids.
So I love that. So that means that nothing has to stop in terms of engaging with your volunteers.
You can work something into every bit of your life. If you're going to a certain area on a doctor's appointment and I'm like, hey, I've got a bulk of either literature or signs or something that I need to get dropped off. Do you mind taking 2 minutes to do it? Usually the answer is always, of course, I'm going that direction.
So you also work with the coordinated campaign and you're as the chair. How do you sort of put both of those things together in terms of how you are managing your volunteers?
Well, the coordinated campaign gives a lot of the chairs resources that we don't normally have or the time to do. So when the opportunity happened, I said, I want that job because I want to turn out votes. And they have the tools that chairs just don't have the time to go through. And we dig deep into find where the volunteers are. Some people that you've never even heard of or numbers that you didn't know were around you that they're able to pull out. And once you get them in the offices, the chairs are the ones that are responsible for keeping those volunteers. And so I wanted to be able to do both. I wanted to go and find them. I wanted to keep them. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to get them here. Virginia has elections every year. And so while the excitement is here and I'm living for all of it, we have an election next year and we don't want to lose them. We want to keep that energy going and moving from year to year to year.
So then finally, I'll ask you then, how do you not wear them out? We have an election every single year. So how do you not wear them out so that they want to keep coming back?
Well, one, you make it fun. Make it fun. And again, take them into your family, give them community. When you make things fun and you make it a part of who you are, it's not work anymore. It's a want situation. Everybody wants to help and take it no matter how small or how big that they're willing. If it's 2 hours at the office or dropping a certain thing off, there's room for everyone. And that way you don't kill the same 5 people because let's face it, sometimes that is exactly the way it is. It's 5 people doing all of the work. But if you make it fun and make it enjoyable for them, then they will come back and do, especially the hard things. And canvassing is one of the hard things. And it's not for everyone, but if they're willing to come out, even if it's just to drive for you, again, in the rural areas, we need drivers. You don't have to go to the doors. You can just drive us there. I'll bump in and out, but you are doing a huge task, and they don't realize how much of a help that actually is. But the majority of it is to get them to come into your family.
Oh, I love that. We've been talking to KRIS Nelson, who is the Warren County Democratic Chair and Regional Organizer. Thank you so much, KRIS.
You.
Keep it going. We need all of those super volunteers that we can get. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
That was really awesome. And it's so impressive. I always get really impressed with people who are working at that level in the rural areas. But we don't really get to spend too much time in rural areas with Susan Loesberg because she's at the VBDC. We have a few rural areas in southwestern Virginia Beach, but not really too much, right? But Susan Loesberg is joining us. She is my friend from Virginia Beach. She is the vice chair of the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee and the Virginia liaison for the Moms Demand Action here in Virginia. She and her team have been using a grassroots approach to managing volunteers with the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee, and I really wanted to bring them on here today because they're being really innovative. And I think when I say volunteer, when I say like grassroots approach to volunteer management, what I really mean is that you are cultivating a relationship-centered way of using the volunteers and engaging them that lasts way beyond the election cycle. It's friendly. It's what KRIS said, bringing them in as family.
Absolutely. So, I started like you did with grassroots organizing in my area, in my community. And what a lot of us who started around 2016, we realized that the Dem Committee wasn't kind of doing that. So we infiltrated and we took some of our craft into the committee. And for example, for me, I'm vice chair of precincts. What the biggest job I have is I need to get outside poll greeters for 108 precincts. And I also have 45 days of early voting that I need to get. So how do I do that? It is year round. So I love to have precinct captains, and a precinct captain is in charge of their area. But we talked about elevating, delegating. they are feeling empowered because they have this mini little area that they're working on and that they're training volunteers for. So to me, I love what I do. I love organizing. I love reaching out to people. I love keeping those relationships year round. Campaigns don't have that luxury like we do, right? Where we get to stay in touch with them all year round.
Right. And I think that goes to the cultivating relationship piece
Yes.
of it that we're better positioned to do. So how do you reach out? So you all have had an influx of volunteers. We have, for Cova Coalition, got 88 new members, which is big for us, just since June 17th. What are you all doing to engage these new folks?
Well, we have a great membership chair, Robin Kessler, we always talk about, and I'm doing precincts, and it's all about bringing in volunteers and retaining volunteers, right? We need to do that too. So it's a lot about like how we do in grassroots. It's finding where they fit. Like campaigns need canvassers. Well, we need outside poll readers, for example, but that might not be comfortable for everybody. So let's find out where they're comfortable. A lot of people have become really after the January 6th, they've been really interested in voter protection. So they want to work inside the polls and do that kind of work. Voter registration, there's always that. So we have a great organizer now with the committee who organizes a team to go out there and do that. So it's about finding that comfort level, finding what they like to do, finding their expertise in their real life or their past life, bringing it in and cultivating that and honoring that, I think too. But I like to challenge people.
Yeah, I know you're better at it. You are better at it, I think, than I am. So the other day when we were talking, I said I kind of start at the bottom and work my way up. And you said you do the opposite.
Yeah, I try to say, yeah, how about doing this? And if they say, oh, I'm not ready to do that, I have so many stories I remember early canvassing, and I had, people who said, oh, I'll never canvass. And I know KRIS talked about, we had the gold standard, I call it. Let's all get into a car. We have a driver, we have a canvasser, someone who holds the bag, right? And then we go up to the door and that person holding the bag doesn't say anything. And I'm not kidding you. Maybe within a couple of times of that canvassing, that person is ready to actually knock on a door. And once they're ready to do that, maybe one day they'll even do it on their own. But I think that's really, it's about, what I use the term. I use the term concierge because that's what I like to do. I like to make sure they're comfortable. I like to find their comfort zone, but I want to challenge them. And I think education and really putting them in the environment what this is. I have people who say, well, I've just knocked on 10 doors. I mean, I went out there, I had 20 doors to knock on. I only got 5 people. I'm not going to do that again. That doesn't matter. And I try to explain to them, it does matter. First of all, you've identified some people who don't live there anymore. And now the campaign will not have to go to that door anymore. I said also, and I know this how many times have you knocked on a door where somebody said, I've got 5 kids here and they're all of voting age and I stick them in a van and we go vote every year. You're educating more than just that one voter about who to vote for.
And you may be bringing that information back to the campaign so they can update that household record. Absolutely. Suddenly they have 5 new names, they have 5 new supporters, 5 potential volunteers, because they always ask us to ask that question if anybody in the house is willing to volunteer. And speaking of campaigns, how do you balance what a volunteer wants to do with what a campaign really needs?
Well, I always want to, respect what a campaign wants. But I know when I first started canvassing, I had 50 doors and they stuck me in the middle of a blizzard with no training. And I was absolutely confident that I never wanted to do that again. But I did. And I think what it is what we talked about just a second ago. It's comfort. And I know, and you've seen it too, Carrie, here in our area, it's changed. The campaigns are not sending people out at 50 doors. They're maybe 30, right? And they're saying, whereas before they wanted to maximize their volunteers and just say one person go out, now they're saying, okay, take a buddy. And I mean, they're coming back, right? They're coming back.
Yes, always.
That's buddies help. Losing them. Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to think that the campaigns are starting to listen to us a little bit.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those of keeping count, we have 72 is bag holder. We forgot that one, bag holder. Got to add that to the list. Yeah. And 73 buddy, which might actually be on the list, the 73. But I think you and I also talked about what you were saying about making people feel like everything they're doing is meaningful. I don't want you to get off of this call without telling the story of Robin Kessler and the volunteers who had to sit in the parking lot and felt great about it. Will you please tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. We had the redistricting, and there were some districts that some precincts that had changed, right, in the redistricting. And Robin actually was the one who just had this terror that people were going to show up and they couldn't vote there. And so what she did is, it was brilliant. She had some people sitting in a car at that precinct, and lo and behold, I was skeptical. People showed up to vote, and they were like, "You don't vote here. You rode around the corner," and we got votes, and it was amazing. Those little things really make a difference. But I really want to stress also, it's honoring. It's the question. There's a concept I call validator. I was delivering signs for our amazing Missy Cotter spousal running for a congressional seat here too. And and to a woman in a neighborhood, and she said, "Susan, I just feel so bad. I'm an introvert, and I just don't feel like I'm helping. I don't like phone banking, and I don't like phone call, the canvassing, and I said, listen, look around your neighborhood. Where are all these Missy signs coming from?" She goes, "Well, me." I said, "You are a validator." And she's like, "What's a validator?" And I said, "A validator is somebody who is in their community, and you are the person your neighbors go to when they don't know who to vote for. Because in our, we have in our local races, we don't have a D or an R next to them. Mm-hmm. And before that Dem voter card comes out, people don't know who they should vote for or donate to." And she really, I think it was really meaningful to her to realize that was part of her superpower. She was somebody who people go to, and you take those people and you times them, and you in a city, in a district, and you have a lot of coverage there.
Yeah, that validation. So we are going to start with our little roundtable, but you and I came up with sort of a list. I want you to go over like just the real quick. You came up with sort of like six best practices for managing volunteers. I just kind of wanted you to go over them real quick for us.
So I call them the codes I organize by. I have them right here. Don't waste a volunteer's time. Be ready for them. If you're having a wedding for your daughter, you make sure there's seating. If you have volunteers coming to an event, you make sure you have everything that they need. And training. So whether they're canvassing, phone banking, whatever. I mean, for Moms Demand Action, when they show up to table at an event, I make sure they have everything that they need so that they're comfortable and they'll come back. The comfort, we've talked about honoring comfort. Explain the assignment, why it's okay we talked about just 5 people at a door. Explain to people why they're there, and connecting it to, I like to say, when you're talking about getting involved with a local candidate, we have reaped the benefits. We've flipped our city council in Virginia Beach, and we're winning. Moms Demand Action we had the first gun violence prevention vote that we've ever had. And gratitude. We need to make sure that these volunteers know that we are just so grateful to them and for the work that they do.
And yes, absolutely value them so much. So we're going to bring in Susan Labandibar and Fanal and Chris and Katherine to kind of start in on this little roundtable of best practices while we're at it. That was actually a really good launch into this. I wanted to add, of course, tailoring those jobs to help them out if they need a smaller turf, if they need a buddy. It's that, as Chris said, you treat them like family. You're the concierge. Sometimes I call myself, command central, but just kind of knowing those things, just adding that to the list, it is definitely something, that we need to keep in mind when we're plugging people into the other 68, the other 68.
I love the 70. Well, what I'm interested in, listening to everything, by the way, this list gets, Susan, you're 6. We need to make sure those are written out. I don't know. I was writing down, explain the assignment, make sure volunteers have everything they need, gratitude, but we need that's 6. But I want to open this up to everybody here just real quick. When I'm hearing all this, how were you trained? Were you ever I feel like a lot of us just came to this by coming to it and maybe learned it. So KRIS Nelson, you have a superpower of really seeing everybody as family and all that. and you're applying that out there. Were you trained, or did you just, this is just you?
Everybody has a talent. Everybody has a talent. This just happens to be mine. It comes naturally to me. I have been working on campaigns since I was young, so I've been in, around it my entire life. But the people part, the organizing part, no, it's just.
And how did you get to this part? Like, when I'm asking this a little deeper, just because I feel like this is the ladder we need to climb up sometimes, that like we just get into this and then finding your next step. Sometimes I feel like that we're doing this work, and why aren't I working in a campaign, like get myself kind of skilled to go that way, to sort of move up. So your thoughts on how did you get to where you are? Just through the committee?
No, it was people came for our library last year.
Okay.
And here in Warren County, you guys know Kelsey. We were very integral both doing that. And I have lived in Warren County for 26 years, and I never saw an explosion of our people before. So I said, I've been waiting for this for 26 years. So I went and I collected them all, and every comment on Facebook, every person that would show their face, we all would put them into a big chat, and we started organizing them that way. And we had meetings every week. And then we had found out that our committee, our local Democratic committee, wasn't helping so much. So my girlfriends and I said, let's go take that over. So that's what we did. And here we all are. So
yeah, well, I love that story. It's important because I think people in the room, there's the magic is just right time, right place, and then getting, moving forward. But the friends and the relationship. Susan Labandibar, what's that story for you?
I'm so glad you asked. I was almost going to raise my hand because I am the opposite. I was not an organizer, had not been trained, and had the opportunity to go and take a class on leadership, organizing, and action. And there I met some incredible organizers. And I think if they had graded that class, I would have gotten a C or a C minus. It was something I had to learn. And one of the things that especially applies to the conversation that we have now is task design. There's actually a kind of a science around how to design tasks so that people not only can do them, but actually enjoy doing them.
I love that. I mean, yeah, so you really had to be more kind of a different kind of approach, trained or learn. You had to really learn it with all your research.
I learned it.
With all the stuff.
I was an IT person, right?
Yeah.
I dealt with computers. This was not I was not
I
born
love
to this.
that. Well, you did look at it like a spreadsheet. So we'll say that.
Yeah.
For you, right? So good. And Susan Loesberg, your background, I'm just so interested how we get to where we are and how you got so proficient at it.
Well, it's funny. I was in nonprofit art in New York City, and I was there for years. And I guess a little bit my working with staff and that mindset. But I moved here after 9/11. I moved to Virginia Beach, and I couldn't find a Democrat. Nobody would raise their hand. And it was really 2016 when all that happened. And I just said, that's it. I called but 3 friends. 12 showed up at a coffee, which turned into 30, which turned into 300. And then I met with Lindsay and Lulani and a few others, and it turned into 2000, this grassroots group we were running. And we just went for it.
Oh.
And I don't know, it was just passion. But I was thinking about, I don't know what prepared me for it, but I love it. I think it was passion and fear.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying these skills and Fennell, and I know that after listening in, some takeaways on this, what you're hearing.
Yeah, I was going to say part of it is just being courageous. And when I listen to Susan and KRIS, I hear this courageousness come out in terms of how you feel for yourselves and how you also take care of others. And so, Carrie, I don't know how you feel about that, but I'd love to hear how that felt and how you take care of others and when you have to stand up for them.
Well, I think that that's really the heart of this conversation, is that we all came from somewhere, and we're cultivating leadership. We see that in every volunteer we interact with. If you don't take time to call them and listen to them, you'll miss it. And the only thing that's going to keep us engaged is those relationships. And, Susan Loesberg mentioned a grassroots organization that she was a part of. We have seen many of these groups fall apart, transition into different things, move, take long breaks, whatever you want to call it, because we know that it is really hard work.
Yes.
I think this is really hard work. And so to stick together and support each other, I think it's a very feminine leadership style.
Is it postmenopausal?
I might actually be, I'm sure, yes, I'll let you know. I'm not really sure, maybe, but I think it's a feminine leadership style that I want to embrace, and I want to pass it on to everyone. And there is just something that gets me going when I successfully get someone to do something they didn't think they could do.
I just had to laugh because when I heard, JD Vance again talk about what women's roles are after we're done postmenopausal, that we're just good for watching grandkids. Maybe we're made for organizing and supporting and beating the shit out of these people. How about that?
How about that?
We just didn't fall out of a coconut tree, friends. I love this conversation, and we're going to continue it in the after chat. I want to say thank you to Susan Labandibar, KRIS Nelson, and Susan Loesberg for being here today and sharing. And I know it's going to be very exciting when we get to the after chat. I hope you can stick with us. I want to make sure that we always say that with this kind of woman in the room, we are going to win, because we know no one is going to save us. It is up to us. And I want to say next week's show is going to be the Divine Nine. And an article dropped there's a couple of days ago that they said that Kamala Harris will win because of the Divine Nine, and we will have all nine represented next Friday. So you don't want to miss it. We don't want to miss it. Exciting. And make sure, look, folks, let's get a Patreon today. Support our show. I'm going to say that would be awesome for us to have some support. And I'm excited also, we're going to put some stuff in the chat. Ken Mitchell, who's running in CD6, has a really great event coming up. And it's going to be, he really needs the support in CD6. And I think today at 4:00, Vidman and Tim Kaine are doing some kind of in-person event at 4. And yeah, Eugene needs some help. So I'm going to put those both in the chat. Let's get to the other side. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to the team making things great. Let's roll credits.